Hello? Oh, wow. Can y'all hear me now? Can you hear me? Somebody say yeah. Kate, let me know if you can hear me. Because I think I see my button moving. I don't know what happened. Y'all know how much I done said by now? Let me know if you can hear me because I can't tell. This really sucks. Oh, thank you, Pauline. Appreciate you. Y'all, I was going in. So let me make this short. This is really talking about your ecosystem, and your ecosystem is whatever you habit, whatever you inhabit, wherever you live, wherever you interact is your ecosystem. So what I'm saying is, as your own ecosystem, your home, your life, your leisure, your work, wherever you frequent, even where you go to shop, is your ecosystem. What I'm saying is we only have control over what we bring into a space when we go into different ecosystems. So when you're at home, how you think and what's in your heart and what comes out your mouth is going to make a difference in how your home life is. The same thing is when you go to work. The same thing when you go to leisure. So you only have control over you, but you will frequent within different ecosystems. And what I really wanted to get at, the heart of this is just understanding, because I see a lot of, I see a lot of different things where people seem to be rocked off their, not, knocked off their rocker because of a situation in their leisure, work, or home. But we only have control over what it is that we do. And what I was saying before you all told me that I could not be heard was that the wrong mindset, because we're going to start with mind. So I'm thinking in terms of what we have control over, in terms of when we're in our ecosystems, and then when we frequent within home, leisure, work, or whatever, those different ecosystems is ourselves, your mind, how you think, your thought process, what's in your heart, what you believe, spiritual, where you are, and then what comes out your mouth, because there's so much power in our tongue. And so I wanted to talk about that because we all know that to a certain degree. But the problem is that we get into different ecosystems and then expect for them to, the inhabitant and the interactions, to change based off of, you know, where we may be at that moment, or maybe even our mindset or what's in our heart. And what I'm saying is we got control over that. You know what I mean? So when I was talking about, learning to listen to what's going on with you, and inside of you, and paying attention to what's going on in your mind. And the reason is because the wrong mindset can destroy your life more so than any other person, demonic presence, or for that matter, a hater. You know what I mean? And so I was talking about what we have control over, and we don't have control over anybody else, but we definitely have control over what goes on in our mind, how we think. Our patterns of thinking is going to impact everything we do and how we approach it, what comes out of our mouth, and how we feel in our heart. You know what I mean? Because what's really going to come out of the heart is what comes out of your mouth is what's going to come out and what's in your heart. But we're talking about your mind. Thoughts have a direct connection to our habits, and those positive thoughts improve our life. And that's the reason why I think the scripture basically goes, if you follow that, but you can use any spiritual doctrine, if you will, is that be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The most of the battle is going to occur in your mind. And once those thoughts are, planted, that it does something else with the rest of our body. Sometimes it comes out our mouth. Sometimes it turns our hearts, good, bad, or indifferent. But be very cautious about, what you're thinking, and govern your ecosystems, because then that's going to determine how you are when you go into different ecosystems. And I'm using that very loosely, understanding that the ocean is an ecosystem. The rainforest is an ecosystem, right? We are our own ecosystems. Everything about us, what we inhabit, mind, body, and spirit, is an ecosystem. And I just put it in that term because it makes more sense to me. The last thing is, one of the things that I notice is we spend a lot of time thinking about what other people think and then saying we don't. Because we spend too much time in other people's head, and we don't know what other people are thinking, and we can't control how they think or feel about us. And a lot of what we do and how we respond to things sometimes is based on what we think somebody else is thinking or may respond, and we just don't know. You know what I mean? And so when we start talking about renewing of our mind and what we got going on in our head, I would say spend as less time really trying to facilitate anybody else's thought process, because honestly, it's hard for me to just think for my darn self, let alone to be trying to really think about what somebody else is thinking that would prevent me to do something or not. You know what I'm saying? That prevents a lot of things that we just don't know. We really don't know. So that's just something to think about. The other thing is what comes out your mouth. You hear people say all the time, I have no filter, and I get it. Like, I get it, because it's the difference between, like, making stuff palatable to everybody. You can't please everybody. It's the difference between sugarcoating. Sometimes it need to be direct. Some things need to be direct. And it also, sometimes you have to be, direct in a way that may be, offensive to somebody who may or may not be trying to get their way. But that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about when I say that is, I'm talking about speaking ill will, either of yourself or any other situation, in a way where it's not necessarily truthful, but it's malicious. And I see that we kind of do that with ourselves. So start with ourselves. First, talk good to yourself. Like, you wouldn't, see a kid struggling or discouraged and be like, the hell with you, and kick them. So then don't do that with yourself. If in fact we do that with ourselves, and 9 times out of 10, we probably do that with other people. And because there's so much power in the tongue, words do land. So I'm gonna give you basically this. In a situation where I have to, co-parent, things can be challenging, and I know I'm not the only one. And so one of the things that we want to do is sometimes kind of to point out or recognize where our partner, our co-parenting partner, is, pretty terrible, or whatever the case may be. And that's human. Like, I'm not judging off of that. That's human, and I have been there. What I have found is that if I speak words of honesty in my prayer, which is where I'm struggling with something, it may even be a little bit more derogatory than what I'm saying right now. But I, am asking for some type of help with that in a way that would be beneficial, not only for myself, but for the situation, because that would be peaceful for the child that's involved. And it's very, very hard. And I can tell you that it sometimes doesn't feel like it's coming quick enough. But what I have been able to believe and see that it does. And so continuing to speak life into a situation, even when you don't see it, continuing to speak those things that are not as if they were, is important. If you want, successful things, thank them now for it. Speak life into it. Be thankful for it now. Have gratitude for it now, because it will come to pass. And a lot of times it's better than we even thought or asked. I can tell you that for myself. I'm pretty sure you out there probably have seen the same thing yourself. But continue to speak life. It is so easy to be like, man, all this such and such and such. It's easy. It's human nature. But maybe take a moment to really recognize what we're putting out in the universe, because that's the kind of thing that's manifesting. And so when we approach a situation in which we say, some ill will or negative things about it, and then when it continues to come to pass and we become frustrated, it has a lot to do with what we said about it. And I'm guilty of it too, which is the reason why I'll try to shut up first before the first thing that's coming to my mind actually come out my mouth. And that's just practice. It's just a matter of taking a minute to take a deep breath before you cuss. Or before you say something that make a situation really, really bad. So, I think the word goes, if it corrupts the whole body, set the whole course of a life on fire, in itself on fire by hell. That is the tongue. That's just how powerful the tongue is. And I think it's not anybody on here who has not experienced something or said something that actually manifested, whether it be a good thing or a bad thing or something that was indifferent. So, really be mindful of the words that come out of our mouth, because that's also going to govern how we go into ecosystems, by what we say and how we think. So I just covered basically how we think about things, and then the words, the power of the tongue, our mouth. And let's see, the last one would be your heart. You know, our decisions, our feelings, our thought processes, and other is really at the control center of our heart. And the center of our heart is going to include our will, our attitude, and our intentions. And the heart of a person is really going to be at the core. It's going to be your heart. And what we have to be mindful of is being in spaces and in environments, ecosystems where it can be corruptive to our heart. And then feeling some kind of way and then choosing to stay within those environments is very, very detrimental. And it's not impossible, but if it's but to be within an environment and it doesn't affect your heart, but if that's only if you don't have any control. But I guess what I'm saying is if you have control over what goes in your heart, your mind, your spirit, then make sure you check it, because ultimately, you know, that is going to govern your actions and your intentions, what we do and how we go about doing it. And that is also going to make the difference in how we show up in our own ecosystems and then what we do when we show up in other people's. And so that's the reason, why, I hear people, and let me flip side that there's things where I hear people that mention, you have a good heart, and people continue to take advantage of your heart, or people do people with a wrong, with a good heart wrong. And that does happen. That absolutely does happen. But I will want to caution us to continue to play the victim to that, because at some point we're going to have to take responsibility for knowing that a situation is the way it is, and then continuing to do it and saying it's a heart issue, because then it's no longer a heart issue. It's a matter of lack of wisdom and understanding and discernment. And then knowing when, what, this is probably not the best thing for me, and being able to bow out. And we have to get to the point where we recognize that nothing about you spiritually, your humanity, your dignity, your integrity, and your whole psychological and spiritual setup is your responsibility. So whenever you need to check out for whatever reason to make sure you stay healthy and whole, and we have to do that. We owe that to ourselves to do that. And again, not being somebody else's head about how they feel about it. I think the right person in the right time will grant the opportunity for a conversation to happen if it's need to happen. But we have to be okay and make peace with the times where we're not going to be able to get that. Sometimes we're not going to get closure on that. Sometimes it's just going to be a peaceful buyout. And sometimes, God willing, we have the opportunity to meet again and have some form of reconciliation if it's warranted. Reconciliation doesn't always need to be a form of a kumbaya moment. That I'm recognizing. Sometimes it's just really a recalibration on the way you feel in your spirit, and you become at peace with it. So, that's something to think about. Is, I think it goes above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. I believe that we're at a point now where we can recognize that is the case. And in institutions and things like that, where we see things are being done, and we know that it's the heart of men that's doing it. These things aren't doing it on their own, because there's a lack of consciousness. So once you have a lack of consciousness, I mean, at that point, you're not really dealing from the heart. If you are dealing from the heart, you're dealing from a hardened heart, and that shows up in the way things are taken, are carried out, I should say. But that's the ecosystem that we all have to be a part of, because we all live here in the United States or wherever we live. But that's important that we look at those things, because it's very easy to have things turn your heart hardened. And what I'm saying is when we have control over what we have coming into our mind and how we think about things, our mindset, when we have control over what we say and what comes out of our mouth, and when we have control over, what I mean, like what's going on in our heart, we don't necessarily have to get entangled in those things. It's important. And I am not above a person who doesn't own it. I mean, I battled with depression, and it is an endless cycle of being stuck in an event of whatever took place and not being able to take it as a point in your history and move it to the past. It's a challenge because the mindset is in this kind of rigmarole, and then as you move forward, you're very cautious, and then because there's no healing and because there's no reconciliation with the history to let it go, it it's crippling and paralyzing moving forward. But I can tell you, for me, what really took place was a shift in the mindset, and it was days that it shifted right on back. It was very much a struggle. Um, but I committed to saying this to myself, especially when I screwed up royally that day for whatever, and whatever you could think of. Said something wrong, did something wrong, wasn't my proudest moment, didn't necessarily handle something, whatever the case may be. What I would tell myself was, God willing, tomorrow I can make things different. And that's what kept me moving. And then once I accepted that my intentions, my heart, that if I continue to evaluate those, check what's coming out my mouth, take accountability when I'm wrong with what comes out my mouth, even what I'm thinking, then it wasn't anything that anybody was going to be able to say to me that was going to make me go back to what it was. You couldn't hold me hostage to the past, because that didn't turn that chapter. As a matter of fact, we in a new book. But if that was the book that somebody else wanted to keep reading, that was completely on them. And sometimes we just have to do that. Sometimes we just have to turn the chapter, or better yet, get yourself a whole nother catalog. Because if we continue in those stories, it's going to continue to affect where we think. It's going to affect what we say. It's going to affect, our hearts. And it's going to keep us in a really disruptive space in our ecosystems. And wherever we go, we're going to bring that energy, that ecosystem, right into other places. And what's going to determine whether or not you enter into ecosystems peacefully, whether you create or bring some sort of balance, or you're disruptive. And I don't know if I can tell you this. I don't want to be around it, and I sure as hell don't want to live like that. So definitely understand that we have that control within our frame of reference. I know a lot of people do say things and everything, and it's not like we don't peep it. The idea is understanding how I'm gonna think about it. Am I going to internalize it? Am I going to think this in my mind? Am I going to be trying to figure out what it is that they have going on? Or do I really need to reel that back in and be like, why am I thinking about it like this? Why does it feel that way? What is the story I'm telling myself? Why is this my perception? Happens all the time. And I think it sounds like a lot of work doing it, but I can tell you, the more that we make a practice of it, I promise you it get better. The window of time in which it takes for us to recognize we got a situation and something took place and it's like affecting us, and the time to resolve and move past it will become like it becomes a lot smaller. You know what I mean? And so that's to say that we'll always be a work in progress. Things are going to bother us, certain things more than others, because we all got our history. Then at that point, as we develop a practice for how we want to approach making sure our ecosystem is good and where we go is good, certain things just ain't going to matter. And that time in which it takes to process those things will be a lot shorter, because you will already have a changed mindset. Your heart would be in a different place because you're constantly evaluating it, coming from a good place. And then your mouth will speak things differently. So then what you put out will actually manifest in a positive way. You know what I mean? And I'll tell y'all this. One of the things that I had to do, seriously. So when I was going through, it was really bad for me at one time, going back and forth to court. And I still actually do this to this day. But I had, because it was so all consuming, I had to transform my ecosystem, which would be my house or my room, basically where I slept, into an environment where I put up nothing but either scriptures or something positive. Because the minute I woke up, it was crash something like right there. You know what I mean? Like the consciousness was, there's your issue. You got this going on. But if I woke up, and even if it hit me, but if I could see in my, in some vision or wherever in my room, something that reflected positivity, then, or something that was encouraging, then that helped at that point shift my mindset. So just something to think about, you know what I mean? Like, have it on your phone, You have it in your music, which you play in the car, depending on what encourages you, makes you get happy, crump, enjoy yourself. Those things are all going to be are all going to be necessary to, really be positive and successful and courageous and a warrior in the battle, because it starts in your mind. The biggest battles are always going to start in your mind. And then from that point, depending on if you lose there, is how it's going to come out your mouth. And depending on how you do there with your mouth, it's going to be in your heart. And if that doesn't get self-corrected, then, it tends to get a little bit worse before it gets better, but it does get better. So again, we can only control ourselves. What we ingest, what we digest will come out in the way we think, what and what we say and how we interact, and our presence in our ecosystems will determine how we show up in other ecosystems, and whether we are peaceful, where we go into them, whether we create or bring balance, or whether we disturb, ecosystems, whether it be our own or wherever we show up. That's going to really start with us. Let me see. Yep, Dominique says we have a choice to make it at every turn in our life. It's not always conscious, but that's why it's a practice. Very good. Deep discussion. It was on my mind for the last couple of days. Definitely. Thank you, Pauline. Love the conversation. I appreciate it. I'm sorry about the beginning and I don't know what's going on. Then Brian says, when I attempt to pray myself past the depression moment, I still struggle. Well, I would suggest you try something that what works for you, Brian. And that may include what is inspiring to you. You have to bombard yourself with inspiration and encouragement more than you are bombarded with the things that you struggle with. And I am not here to tell you that's going to be easy. That is a battle, but it is not a losing battle. It is not a losing battle. It is always able to come around. And what I will encourage you by saying is, the harder the battle, the more you struggle with it, the bigger the breakthrough when you do come out of it, which is the reason why I can sit up here and tell you in good spirit and be very transparent with you all about these things, because it was periods of time where I battled with depression. And now it's not so much that I battle with depression as much as I used to, but I am very cognizant of what's going on in my ecosystem and when I need to make adjustments so that I don't go and spiral out of control. So, Brian, whatever is important to you that encourages you. I had a video on my phone, dead serious. I had a video on my phone one time of a baby that was getting her first bath. She had just been born. And just the sheer pleasure of this little precious baby and the way she enjoyed that bath, and they video taped it, brought me a sense of, I don't know what it was. I can't even share with you, but I kept it on my phone. And on days where I felt I felt low for whatever reason was going on, I could look at this video and just watch this baby into this world, don't have a clue what the heck they're getting ready to experience in this realm, and look at this innocent thing, just like all they want, the bath or the water on their head was just completely gratifying for this baby. And for me, that pleasure in that took me into a different space. So what I'm saying to you is, find what works for you. It don't got to look like that. Whatever it is, it could be an old, rerun of Sanford and Son. I don't know. You can find encouragement in the things that matter to you. Make it work for you. And it don't have to look like anybody else. Make it work for you. But bombard yourself with that encouragement and that positivity more than you do the stuff that you struggle with. And it will get better, but you have to be consistent, because that breakthrough is going to be powerful when you do. That's just my thoughts on what I would say, Brian, in that situation. Mama say, make God the center of your ecosystem. And that is very true. That is very true. If you're operating from anything, and whatever your belief is, or some people like to say God, higher consciousness, light and energy. I know it's known by a different name, whatever it is. If your religion relates to that, just let it be your understanding of what it is. So for me, I like to call it God. It is very much the center in which I operate, keeps me in check. It got to keep me in check. I was just asking somebody, y'all, before I go. I was like, why is the road to was it righteousness so narrow? Lord, can we get a little bit of room? I'm about to fall off this narrow road of righteousness. I asked my best friend that. But we were having a conversation about the power, the life and the death being in the power of the tongue. So when I say, hey, I'm going to be doing it, she's like, it's already done. And that's the kind of people you want in your ecosystem. You want people encouraging you. You want people speaking life into you. You want people saying, no, we going to do this, or no, you ain't going to say hope, it's done. That's who you want in your ecosystem too. Just my thoughts. Get those kind of people. When you call your friend and say, hey, girl, listen, I'm about to, and they say, let me pray for you. Those are the people you want in your ecosystem. Now, every now and then you're going to go to good gossiping. I promise you, it's just human nature. But that is not to be the way in which you handle everything, because that's just not, it continues to spread like wildfire. You know what I mean? And so sometimes you just need somebody to vent to, and that person can listen. But if they co-sign on foolishness, you might want to check that person being in your ecosystem, especially in terms of if it lines up with what we know to be the right thing based on whatever doctrine you believe in. They say different things, but they all mean the same. So just that's the thought that came to my head very randomly. I apologize. I appreciate y'all bearing with me. I appreciate you all letting me know I didn't have any sound today. I'm grateful that you came. I'm getting ready to hop off here and watch the game. I have really been enjoying these last couple of games, seeing that like the period for the rest was short. So you have all of the teams that were in the last playoffs in the bubble. All of them are out. I just think they were burnt out. And so being able to see, I call him Wispy Hair, Trey Young. I call him Wispy. And I'm hoping Chris Paul will come back, because, I hate for him to end up like Charles Barkley and never have a championship. So I'm going to watch me some sports. But y'all have a good night. Thank you all for joining me, and take care of yourself and one another. Peace out.